Hey folks, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds, hanging out with this nerd.
Nerdarchy Ted.
Today we're going to delve into Unearthed Arcana, and we're going to be looking at Centaurs and Minotaurs that you can use in your game. We're going to start this video by thanking our sponsors, Easy Roller Dice, whether it's your first set of dice or your 1 millionth set of dice, Easy Roller Dice for all your dice rolling needs. Down in the description, you can find a link to easyrollerdice.com/nerdarchy, as well as a one-time discount code for a whopping 20% off your first order of Easy Roller Dice. Go check that out and get some Easy Roller Dice in your life. So today we have Unearthed Arcana, Centaurs and Minotaurs. We were just talking a little bit beforehand, and Ted is like, there's no way I would have thought they would have ever went to Centaurs. And, you know, we know this stuff is like playtesting for where they're going to go in the future. So that does raise some questions. What do they plan on putting Centaurs and Minotaurs in? And we're getting a second pass on Minotaur too. So that also means they're probably very much interested in using them for something.
So Minotaurs, I think, are a nice strong point, for some who want that more, barbaric race, and orc just isn't satisfying your needs. Minotaur's a good thing.
Or it could be speaking to, Kryn.
It could be absolutely
Dragonlance.
It could be speaking about Dragonlance and Kryn. They do make mention, of that in there with the previous article. But Centaurs, I feel like with them having such a massive ECL in 3rd edition, equivalent character level, that taking them into 5th as a playable race wasn't anything that I would have thought was going to happen.
Yeah, I don't actually remember what their ECL was. I mean, I don't think it was as big as like a half dragon or anything like that. I mean, their main thing was they got some bumps to stats.
They got significant bumps to their stats. They got hit dice. They got some abilities. They got proficiencies. It was a pretty big deal, and you just didn't see a whole lot of Centaurs in the games that we played because of that ECL bump.
Well, not only that, playing a Centaur in a game like D&D is problematic. While it's the same problem of having that character that specializes in the mount, right? Mm-hmm. They are kind of a mount, so they don't fit places that necessarily some of your other characters would fit well. Like going into dungeons and things like that, underground, that's not going to be particularly easy for a Centaur because, one, they tower over many people, but also they have 4 legs, they're quadrupeds, they take up a lot of space, and there's a lot of climbing involved.
Water. You're not going to take a Centaur on a ocean-bound adventure.
Well, maybe. I don't know. Horses swim, so, I guess they can swim. So that part I'm not so sure about. I mean, there's like a whole thing where places where you can go and see the horses swim kind of thing. But, yeah, so with the underground and dungeons, if you're doing that kind of thing, it seems a bit tough. Now, oddly enough, with the Centaur, they did not make them large, right? They're still like pretty adamant about like if you're a player race, you are medium or small.
I was kind of shocked at that myself reading through, and like there's definite reasons for it because there's the whole structure of, well, if you're medium sized, these kind of things can affect you. If you're large, these kind of things can affect you. So I think if they stick to your player character, you're small or medium, makes things a lot easier. Just like they're not offering up pixies and sprites to be able to play them because they're tiny. So.
And magical abilities too. There's that.
There's that.
So Centaurs, they have the main headers like they do for everything. You've got you've got Nature's Cavalry, Nature and Community, Centaur names, and then it goes into Centaur traits. So I mean, from the different headers, you get what you would expect from Centaurs. Centaurs are roamers at heart. Centaurs love open spaces and the freedom to travel as much as they can. Centaurs run, they race the wind, hooves thundering and tails streaming behind them. So it's very evocative, captures this idea of when I think of a Centaur from that description, I think open plains.
Yeah. I like what they said about the Centaur names in that they don't have surnames or family names. They have, you get one name, and typically you're named after the last member of your family who died of the same gender. So it's a hopefully you can carry on the name and a shred or a shard of that spirit to continue that name. So I thought that was kind of cool.
They're also, they're connected to nature a little bit more so than maybe some of the other races. When it comes to conflict and combat, they tend to be skirmishers, is kind of what it speaks to a bit. With that, we jump into what you get for being a centaur. You're going to get a +2 to strength and a +1 to wisdom. All right, seeing war clerics maybe. Rangers.
War clerics make sense for statistically. I just don't see them like the idea of a centaur and a war cleric. They just don't jive.
Well, they could be kind of tribal, so I definitely could see where that could definitely come into play with them being being a shaman, or if their group or tribe is a little more warlike. So I don't know, it'd be fun, but definitely rangers, and
Yes.
they're definitely well equipped to be rangers, especially if you're talking about you're essentially a mounted archer.
But I mean, you could absolutely still go with fighter or barbarian. The bump to wisdom is going to be useful for perception and that kind of stuff. So I think that'd be still a good get for them.
Now we have they are medium. They're considered medium, as we already said, but they tower over most humanoids. Walking base speed is 40 feet. Now they are the fastest in the game, pretty much, which makes sense for what they are. They have the charge ability, and this is a little bit different mechanically. So it looks like Wizards of the Coast is trying something different. If you move at least 20 feet straight toward a target and then hit with a melee weapon attack on the same turn, roll the weapon's damage dice twice and add them together. Once you use this ability, you can't use it again until you finish a short or long rest. Basically, it's a crit. They said double damage without it. So, but what that means is, because you're doubling the dice, if you actually crit, you would then add to the dice pool as well. And I think that's why it's worded that way.
Mm-hmm.
So on the charge, they're going to hit hard. And it kind of like defeats my idea of the mounted archer, the ranged archer. They're going to benefit from melee with that. Right. Their other thing is your hooves are natural melee weapons with which you're proficient. If you hit with a hoof, the target takes a bludgeoning damage equal to die 6 plus your strength modifier. It's okay. It's nothing groundbreaking. It's equivalent of having a simple weapon essentially. So it's useful. You're always kind of technically armed. Your DM might allow you to do that as an offhand attack as a bonus action for 2-weapon fighting. I probably would allow it.
Yeah, I think it's kind of cool because you could be able to kick out front. You rear up and you kind of kick at them, or you could do like a behind rear kick. So I think it'd be kind of cool. And if you went with a more strength build, I think you might have a little bit of fun. If you go Battle Master and you take some of the movement options, I think it'd be a lot of fun to be like, I'm just pushing you around with my hooves.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some things you can do there. Now, equine build, this kind of like speaks to some of the things we were bringing up earlier. You count as one size larger when determining carry capacity and weight you can push or drag. So essentially, it's like having the powerful build ability. In addition, any climb that requires hands and feet is especially difficult for you because of your hooves. When you make such a climb, each foot of movement costs you 4 extra feet instead of the normal 1 extra foot. So that's where they're really speaking to, hey, like you're a quadruped and you got this big horse butt behind you, so it's going to be hard for you to climb, and they kind of address that. And then finally, medium or smaller creatures can ride your equine back. If you allow it as such situation, you continue to act independently, not as a controlled mount. So again, that does give you kind of the advantage of you if you wanted to team up, or maybe you wanted to double up on mounted archers, or the charge into melee. Maybe you got a cavalier buddy, which would probably stack pretty nicely. Or maybe if you were both cavaliers, I'm not sure how that would work, but that would be fun to play with.
All right, you're right-handed. I'm left-handed. Go. He's got the 2 lances out front.
Yeah.
And,
most warriors train with both hands, so you could switch them back and forth.
So you get Survivor, which you have proficiency in the survival skill. You get a thing called Hybrid Nature, which essentially means you are a humanoid and a monstrosity. So if something affects one or the other, it affects you. So like there's some stuff in there. So like you technically are going to count as a monster for dominate spells, and you're going to count as a humanoid, so you count as a person. So dominate person and dominate monster both work on you.
So the funny thing about that part, right, is recently Patton Oswalt tweeted out, and Jeremy Crawford responded to it, and he wanted to know what happens if a werewolf bites a centaur. Does the upper part turn into a werewolf, or does the whole thing turn into a werewolf? How does that work? And Jeremy Crawford is like, some kind of like funny retort, but the gist of it was, centaurs are monstrosities. They're not humanoids. Therefore, it doesn't work. So, buoy on you, Mr. Lycanthrope. But according to this, and I read it after having read this, I'm like, but it does according to your Unearthed Arcana. Absolutely turns you into a werewolf, but what kind of werewolf are you?
All right, only as a PC, because if you go to the monster manual, they're a monstrosity.
Well, that's true.
So if you're a PC, then of course you can become a werewolf or a werewolf.
Some people just rather use Apple. I don't know. So that kind of, oh, wait a minute, languages. You get to speak, read, write Common, and you get Sylvan as well.
So centaurs don't get their own language here. I was curious to know, because every once in a while they just we're gonna add a new racial language in here. And
although a lot of times in previous editions, about the centaurs, they usually speak Sylvan.
Yeah, was curious what it was going to wind up being. So we dive into Minotaur. So in 2015, Minotaurs appeared as a playtest option in Unearthed Arcana. Here is a revised set of traits for Minotaur player characters. These traits are suitable for Minotaurs on Krynn and in other D&D worlds where these people have avoided the demonic influence of Baphomet. So, like, as I said, it specifically calls out for use in Krynn. So maybe that's something that they are.
Maybe it means something. Maybe it doesn't. But it does mean one thing, I think. I think they're saying, go back to that on Unearthed Arcana. And if you want all the flavor text stuff, that's where you can pull it from.
Yeah, I wound up pulling the stat page for the Minotaur from Waterborne Adventures.
All right, well, you bring that up, and I will look at what they get now. I mean, because we actually have a review of Waterborne Adventures on the channel, so if you want to check that out, that can.
And you can still go grab that on Unearthed Arcana, if you want to look at the RP stuff that's there, as well as do the compare contrast that we're looking at here.
Yeah, I mean, they did some cool things. Not only was it the Minotaur, but they also had like fighting styles and stuff like that in there as well. So Minotaur traits. This is the first thing I know there's a change in. Ability score increase for strength. Score is by 2, Constitution by 1, but it was something different before.
You used to get a +1 to strength, and then you had Conqueror's Virtue. From a young age, you focused on one of the 3 virtues of strength, cunning, or intellect. Your choice of strength, intelligence, or wisdom score increases by 1. So you were only getting a total of +2 divided between +1 to strength and a +1 to strength, intelligence, or wisdom.
Yeah, I totally hated any of the Unearthed Arcana where they did the less than +3. So I wouldn't mind if they kept that, but increased the strength to 2, like to give them that flexibility. Maybe they thought that was a little bit too good for you Minotaurs. So that's that. They lean towards lawful alignment. Their size, again, is still medium, but on average, they are over 6 feet tall. So they're big. Speed is 30, which we would expect. Your horns are natural melee weapons, which you're proficient with. When you hit with them, you target the target takes piercing damage equal to your strength modifier.
Now this is vastly changed. You used to have you're never unarmed. You're proficient with your horns, which are a melee weapon to deal 1d10 piercing damage. Your horns grant you advantage on all checks made to shove a creature, but not to avoid being shoved.
Yeah, so we went down 2 dies from a die 10 to a die 6 now. Which, again, I'm actually okay with that. Because they do some interesting things later, which I think is kind of cool. Goring Rush. Immediately after you use the dash action on your turn and move at least as far as your speed, you can make 1 melee attack with your horns as a bonus action. Kind of cool.
So they had Goring Rush before, and it's actually better. Because when you make a dash attack during your turn, you can melee attack with your horns as a bonus action. So, you didn't have to move as far before, but I think it's saying if you take the dash action, so here you could move, but you have to still move your speed. So, I don't know, 6 of one, half dozen of the other.
So, Hammering Horns, this is where I think we're going to see like a big change and a new mechanic essentially. We got immediately after you hit a creature with a melee attack as part of the attack action on your turn, you can attempt to shove the creature with your horns using your reaction. The creature must be no more than one size larger than you and within 5 feet of you. If so, you must make a strength saving throw against DC 8 plus your proficiency modifier plus your strength modifier. If it fails, you push it up to 5 feet away from you.
So they again had hammering horns before, but it was during, if you attacked with your horns, you could shove them with your bonus action. So now you could technically use the dash to move, hit them with your horns, and then use your reaction to hit them. Couldn't do all that before.
Yeah, so that part is really cool. I think it's an elegant way to use the mechanics. There's going to be some other interesting ways that it's going to get used. I feel like that we could see it would stack really nice with Shield Master. So then you instead of pushing someone 5 feet, you can actually push them 10 feet. It's going to be a little bit harder because they have to fail a saving throw twice. But if you wanted to do a whole like fighting style around that, you'd be able to do it. I could also see some areas with Battle Master where you could combine this. So it just offers up some more options because you're using that reaction instead of a bonus actions. I kind of like that. I think it's kind of cool. So here's another place where we're going to see some changes. Menacing, you proficiency, intimidate skill in the previous one, and I believe it was a bit different.
Yeah, you got Sea Reaver. You gain proficiency with Navigator's Tools and Vehicles Water. And they've also lost Labyrinthine Recall. You can perfectly recall any path that you have traveled, which as a player character, the specific wording on that is pretty rough. And it's like, oh, I've gone into a cave complex. I've walked it. I can perfectly recall it. That takes a lot of things away from the GM's power.
The Minotaur could not get lost previously. And it made sense for the Minotaur because if you go with Minotaurs being the master of the labyrinth, that makes sense. But it doesn't necessarily make sense with the idea that you're using the Kryn style Minotaur, which are sailors and reavers. Like, you're on the open sea. Like, it just didn't feel right for followers of Baphomet. And if that's the lineage you're using, then yeah, absolutely, it makes sense. So them taking that away is not a big deal. Intimidation just kind of works because you're a big burly monster creature. Yeah, you're going to be freaking scary.
We again touch on the hybrid nature, just like the Centaur. Minotaurs are both a humanoid and a monstrosity, so they're going to be able to suffer the banes and the boons of both.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately the idea is they don't want the player race to be able to hide behind their type and get extra resistances for that. And then finally that leads us to languages you can speak, read, write, Common, and Minotaur.
So again, we get into that. If you look at the player's handbook of all the different languages and stuff that are there, Minotaur is yet another new option. So now I want to go through and look and see what's in the monster manual. Does it list Minotaur there, or are they adding it because it's a PC race?
That's a good question. I think a lot of times when they do add them, it is because they're already is under the monster entry anyway. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, my character knows all the languages. Oh wait, there's a bunch more that they snuck in there. Curse you, Wizards of the Coast! Reliant must speak all the languages.
He's never gonna get there. We're running out of time.
And he's going to turn evil and destroy the universe first anyway.
Well, there's always that possible option as well. So what do you guys think of Minotaurs and Centaurs? Are you happy about them being added as playtest options? Or are you like, what the heck? These things aren't PCs. Let's leave that more on the monster side. So please jump down in the comments below. Share your opinions. Let us know what you think. While you're down there, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Don't forget to check out the description where you find a link to Easy Roller Dice, as well as that one-time promo code for a whopping 20% off.
So until next time,
stay nerdy.